get into it. So we got 79 people in here. Thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate it. This is awesome. This event's going to be awesome. If you can, like the live, share the live with anybody who you think might be interested. And yeah, we're basically getting started. Right now, I'm hosting the debate for Coco-Mania, the consciousness hysteria, basically. This debate is clearly over, does materialism explain consciousness? Mike Brigandi and Alex K were having some disagreements on whether materialism could explain consciousness, so we decided to host this formal debate, settle it once and for all, I guess. We have 5 fantastic judges that stepped up. Mike Brigandi agreed to having Jordan and Tiny Science as his judges. Alex K agreed to Placide Saul and Wadat as his judges. And the neutral judge is going to obviously be Buddhist Bear in order to settle the score out of 5. For this debate, everyone, I hope that you put your personal biases aside, hear what the debaters are saying, learn something from this, maybe have something you could take away. And we're going to have the judges vote for who the winner is, and we're also going to have audience vote. And then I guess lastly, before we start the debate, any gifts, any extra change that you guys might have, please gift the judges and the contestants first. They're taking time out of their day to entertain you guys. And if you have any spare change, feel free to gift me, fulfill my gift goal. It helps me to manage my channel, but you don't have to. We just appreciate you guys being here and watching the debate. That is awesome enough. You guys are taking time out of your day to watch this debate, to be on my channel. I appreciate that. But gift the judges, gift the debaters, and then lastly, gift me. I'm just keeping time. But with that, we're going to start our debate. The affirmative is going to get, basically the format for this debate is it's going to be 7-minute openers, 5-minute rebuttals, 2 rounds of 10-minute cross-examinations, and 4-minute closers. The affirmative is going to start, which is going to be Mike Brigandi. So you're going to get 7 minutes on the clock, and I will put a Tik-Tok timer on you. And it basically starts whenever you say your first word.
Yeah, so thanks guys for being here. Thanks for the host for hosting. So I'm a materialist, or to be more precise, modern settings, I'd be called a physicalist. I believe that everything is made of the entities described by fundamental physics. Now, obviously, consciousness is explained under this view, as I take consciousness to be itself a physical process. Now, David Chalmers, a philosopher, has raised this hard problem of consciousness, right? This is really the main motivation for my opponent's view, where he says, well, maybe you can know everything about physics, about my brain states, and how perception is correlated to consciousness, but that wouldn't tell us what experience is, right? Like what experiencing the color red is, right? And he calls this qualia. So we ask, how can basically the physical stuff yield qualia? Well, to me, qualia, they are physical processes. So in particular, it's neuronal bioelectricity. And I can get into the fancy physics about this, right? Ion channels, oscillations of electrochemical impulses. But ultimately, consciousness or subjective experience is going to be identical to this physical process. So for example, the experience of the color red is itself the brain activity in the brain. And this perfectly aligns with the empirics. It explains why when you alter the brain, you predictably alter experience. Why anesthesia removes consciousness, right? Why when you damage the brain, you also respectively damage experience. Why when there's no function in the brain, there's functionally no experience. So, materialism explains consciousness the same way it explains everything else, by showing that it is a real causally effective phenomenon arising from physical structure, governed by discoverable laws. So often people will say, how is consciousness produced from mental processes? But no, I think that the mental process in itself is consciousness. They are identical, right? So I'm an identity theorist for this reason. And I take consciousness to be weakly emergent of physical phenomena in the brain and the body. In other words, when I say weak emergence, I mean on higher level scales, there's a novel property, consciousness, that emerges, but it is all still reduced to physics. There's no new ontology being added, right? So I'm not a dualist in this perspective. Everything is physical or material. Now, David Chalmers, in his 2002 consciousness paper, he describes the hard problem of consciousness, but also gives us a few paths that people can take in response to this problem. The problem being, what is experience like? How do we know what it's like to be experiencing? Now, of course, my response to this is going to be a type B materialist or physicalist. So I say that I recognize this epistemic gap between third-person facts and first-person experiences, but I reject that there's any kind of ontological gap here. It's purely epistemic, which is a common thing to have in the realm of physics, mainly because I can't be other atoms, right? I'm constrained to my own atoms. So clearly there's an epistemic block in between my experience and somebody else's experience. I can't be your experience. I can't experience what it's like to be a cat or a dog because I just don't have those atoms. But my opponent is under the impression that because this epistemic gap exists, that therefore it must follow that physicalism as an ontology is false or has major flaws. But again, my opponent, in order to do that, in order to show that materialism can't account for consciousness, he would have to show the ontological gap. Now, there are a few arguments against materialism, and I'll go through two of the main ones here. The first one is the argument from knowledge. So this basically says, for example, Mary is a scientist. She knows everything there is about physical facts about the world. She knows everything about colors in terms of, their frequencies of lights and the photons, the different cones and rods in the eye, the visual cortex, everything. She understands everything about the physics. However, she lives in a completely black and white world where she doesn't experience color. She hasn't yet experienced color. She lives in a black and white world, right? However, one day color is introduced to her. And so she does experience color one day. And so the opposition wants to say, well, it seems like this person gained new knowledge. They gained a new understanding of what colors are. But in response to this, I take the ability response. What I'm saying is, Mary doesn't actually learn any new propositional knowledge when she experiences the color red. She's merely accessing already known information in a different way. Like, for example, if I know cubed boxes have 6 sides, I may experience the box from 2 different points of views and see 2 different sides, right? If I look at the box from another direction, I might see another side, but I didn't learn anything new about the box propositionally. I just learned a new way to access the box. So that's why this argument fails. Another argument is, which my opponent's likely going to use, is an argument from deducibility. So it says something like, well, if you're going to be a weak emergentist, you're going to have to assume that consciousness is completely deducible from physical facts. That's what physicalism entails. As a weak emergentist especially, it must follow that consciousness can be completely explained and deduced from physical facts, which I agree. I agree that every physical phenomenon is reducible in principle to physical facts about the world. However, there's a problem. It's called practical undeducibility. Although things might be possible in principle to deduce, it doesn't mean that they are practically possible to deduce. So, for example, consciousness is deducible from material in principle, but not practically. Any attempt to try to deduce the existence of consciousness would be practically impossible because it would just be too much information. For example, this applies to other things in the physical world that are not experiential, like cats. If I told you to deduce the existence of cats from the language of physics, how would you do that? You would need to know every position, momentum of every particle in the cat for every time since the origin of the universe. You could not practically give a formalized version of this deduction.
Finish your last sentence.
So this is why we use induction at higher level emergent properties, same with consciousness. And so hopefully we get a response to this from my opponent. If he can do it, which is a really fringe idea, he win a Nobel Prize. So go ahead and let's get this started.
Yep. Thank you for your opening statement. That was 7 minutes for the affirmative. Now we're going to move on to the opposition. You're going to have 7 minutes to do your opening statement. And it starts whenever you say your first word, Alex.
Yeah, sure. I've got a bit of a different twist on the knowledge argument here. So, what are we? What is consciousness? Are we just a pile of atoms, or is there some more fundamental explanation necessary? I'm an atheist and an idealist. While my personal view is that consciousness is the fundamental reality, the debate today centers on one critical question. Does materialism, specifically Mike's mind-brain identity theory, coherently explain consciousness? My thesis is that Mike's reductive theory is fundamentally incapable of meeting its own logical burden. I will demonstrate that his explanation is fatally insufficient at minimum and likely logically incoherent at worst. I will show that his position is not an explanation, but rather a brute assertion of identity based on his precept that only physical things exist. It is a position motivated by faith and dogma, not by logical demonstration. Consciousness is maybe the most important mystery that still exists, and we cannot just make assumptions here. We must first establish the philosophical standard of an actual explanation. Mike is defending the mind-brain identity theory. His job here today is to explain consciousness via a material substrate, not just simply assert its identity. He claims subjective experience is identical to the objective brain process. Mental state equals physical state. This is an ontological commitment, a claim about ultimate reality. For this identity to be true, it must meet the standard of necessity. The underlying physical facts must logically guarantee the conscious result. That is to say that given all the physical facts, consciousness or the concept of experiential properties must logically follow. Put simply, if consciousness is truly nothing over and above bioelectricity, it must be fully determined by the underlying physical parts and microphysical laws in principle. It must be formalizable with physicalist language in principle, otherwise known as math. All of what I just said can be verified in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy under the entries for identity, or specifically mind-brain identity theory, right? This necessity is required because Mike's theory attempts to solve the hard problem of consciousness, which is the conceptual opaqueness between the objective describable structure of physical processes and the privately subjective experience of consciousness. Put simply, we just can't see the connection between first-person subjective experience and third-person objective descriptions. The whole point of an explanatory theory is to bridge the gap in our understanding. A true identity requires deduction in all cases to prove the link is necessary. This brings us to the core of Mike's burden. You claim identity theory. Identity is a claim that the two conceptually distinct terms actually refer to the same thing. And every successful identity, like water is identical to H2O, the theory provides a conceptual bridge, a deduction that shows how the concepts align. Your burden is to logically dissolve the conceptual disparity between third-person objective processes and first-person subjective experience. Crucially, while scientific study provides us with vast amounts of data, the empirics do not decide this question. Empirical data can only confirm correlation, not the logical necessity required for identity. We will test the logical rigor of this alleged identity in a variety of ways. So to demonstrate that Mike's identity claim cannot meet the standard of necessity, we need only look at the conceptual facts. Consider the classic thought experiment of Mary the neuroscientist. So Mary lives in a black and white room, but before ever seeing color, she learns the complete and final neuroscientific theory of color experience. She knows every physical fact there is to know about how the brain processes color. If materialism is true, and if neuroscience can, in principle, give us a complete theory of color experience, then Mary already possesses that theory before she ever leaves the room. From this, it follows that Mary should know all of the essential features of color experience. Just as someone who possesses the complete and final theory of black holes thereby knows all of the essential features of black holes. Someone who possesses the complete theory of color experience should know all of its essential features. And yet, when Mary leaves the room and sees red for the first time, she learns something new. She learns what it's like to experience red. This is not a new physical fact, but an essential feature of the experience itself, one that was not contained in the neuroscientific theory she already possessed. Therefore, a neuroscientific theory of color experience is necessarily incomplete. The final theory of color experience, as espoused by neuroscience, is necessarily incomplete, and if materialism were true, it would not be. Qualia is irreducible to the language of physical science. Put simply, if you cannot even articulate the explanandum, the thing to be explained, the qualia, it's not logically possible to articulate an explanation.
Oh, doing okay, Alex K? Would that be the conclusion of your opening statement, or?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, thank you for your opening statement. We appreciate it. You had 1 minute and 40 seconds on the clock. With that, we're going to move to our rebuttals. So, Mike, you're going to do a 5-minute rebuttal of Alex K's opening statement. You get 5 minutes to talk, and your 5 minutes starts whenever you say your first word.
Yeah, so I addressed everything he said in my opening statement, I think just fine. He said, given all physical facts, consciousness must follow from this. I agree. We can reduce consciousness down to physics. I agree. But then he said we have to formalize it mathematically. This is utterly insane, right? This is an extremely high standard. How do you deduce cats from mathematics? How the hell do you do that practically, right? Maybe in principle, right, in a hypothetical, theoretical aspect, it's possible to deduce cats or any object or consciousness from pure physical language, but it's not practical to do that, right? Just like, I can't even, how do you deduce, that would be my question to Alex, how do you deduce even a grain of sand from pure mathematics, or let alone a cat, let alone consciousness? It would just be too complicated of a mess. And so this is more of a limitation of the language than is it a limitation of my ontology as a materialist or physicalist. There's no ontological gap that my opponent has pointed out here. And then he said, then there's a third person and first person epistemic gap. I agree. I agree that I can't be you. I agree that I can't be your atoms. That, in my view, that's what first person just means. First person just means my atoms. That's all it means. There's nothing new that first person ontologically has that third person has. They're the same physical stuff. It's just different types of physical stuff. And so, yeah, to me, Alex has yet to demonstrate a flaw, let alone any kind of contradiction in my view. Yeah, I think that's all. Qualia, then he says it's incomplete. No, I can give if you're gonna say that I have to have a complete understanding of consciousness for it to be material or to be physical, well, then you have to say that we'd have to know everything about gravity for it to be physical. I think that's crazy. We can make an inductive case, right? We don't actually have a mechanistic explanation that's complete for gravity, right? Like this mouse falling, I don't know why we don't know why that actually happens. We don't actually know with completeness why that happens. And so to suggest that the standard is that we have to explain everything completely in order for it to be a valid ontological theory or metaphysical theory is, I think, absurd. I don't think my opponent, even though he doesn't want to defend his view, he's too scared to, I don't think that he could uphold that same standard himself. How does he deduce mental experience from other mental experience in terms of our minds? How do you do that? So yeah, I don't think that my opponent has done anything yet to even make a flaw in my view. So yeah, with that, I yield my time.
Okay, thank you for your rebuttal. You had 1 minute and 33 seconds on the clock. With that, Alex K, you're going to get your 5-minute rebuttal. And then after that, we're going to move on to cross-examination. So your 5 minutes starts whenever you say your first word.
Yeah, so look, the Mary's Room thought experiment is meant to show, which you haven't refuted, that there's some aspect of qualia or first-person experience that is irreducible to physical language, which is the type of language we use for fields like neuroscience, right? It's the only type of language available to describe what you call the physical world. And so the thing is, identity theory is committed to the view that consciousness is nothing over and above a physical state. You combine that with weak emergence, and so you're saying that it's fully reducible and in principle deducible from lower level physical facts, right? There are certain logical burdens that come with these views, right? You can't just say that because I don't have epistemic access, that means, or, I can still make ontological claims. You are a reductionist. You are committed to full reduction in principle. Mary's Room demonstrates that full reduction is not in principle possible because you cannot even articulate qualia. If you can't articulate the thing you are trying to explain, you could not possibly articulate an explanation. I yield.
Okay, thank you for your rebuttal. You had 3 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. So now we're going to move into first round of cross-examination. Mike Brigandi, you're going to get 10 minutes to do your cross-examination. This will be your time to build up your position and ask any questions to delegitimize your opponent. And it starts whenever you say your first word.
Yeah. So, Alex, do you think that I have to perfectly be able to with physical language be able to deduce from just pure physics or pure mathematics a cat?
No.
You think I'm committed to this?
You're committed to the idea that the cat is fully determined and explained by deductively the underlying microphysical facts.
That's not what I asked you. Am I committed to being able, and in my view, deduce a cat,
Yes.
the existence of a cat from pure mathematics?
Yeah, so if we take the cat's mind out of the picture, in principle, yes.
What do you mean take the mind out of it? What do you mean?
Like I want to be careful not to bake mind into these examples, right? I want to cut that out real early. But if we're just talking about a cat as a biological creature, we're not talking about the behavior of the cat, right? Because the behavior would be invoking the irreducible mind.
Look, I don't want you to waste my time here. Yes or no? Do I have to be able to deduce the existence of a cat from pure mathematics?
The existence of a cat is absolutely deducible from physics, in principle.
In principle.
Maybe not in practice, but in principle.
Okay, so then you agree that I don't, in practice, have to be able to do that right now for my view to be valid.
Yeah, no, you just have to give a general idea of how it even makes sense to begin with.
Okay, so then I don't have to deduce the existence of consciousness from pure physics right now. I just have to have some inductive case for it, which I already made in my opening.
No, I don't get that, but that's okay. We'll get to it.
Okay. All right. Do you think that, so you said before that I need to have epistemic access to everything to make an ontological claim. Do you still agree to that? Do you still hold to that?
Yeah, in principle.
So you think I have to have epistemic access as a physicalist to everything in the universe to make an ontological claim that the status of the universe is physical?
I mean, look, anybody can make claims, but to know something is a different question.
It's a yes or no, Alex. You're making this very difficult for us.
Well,
yes or no.
If you're asking what you can make claim, Mike, I can't tell you what claims you can and cannot make. But what I can tell you is whether there's support for that claim or not.
You're confused. Do I have to be able to know? Do I have to have epistemic access to all facts in the physical world to make an ontological claim that it's physical?
You don't have to have facts to make claims. It's just a stupid question.
Do I have to have epistemic access to all physical facts to make an ontological claim?
You don't have to have facts to make claims. It's a stupid.
Why are you not answering the question?
Look,
You're not answering directly. Do I have to have epistemic access to all facts about the physical world to make an ontological claim about the physical world?
If you want to make a definitive ontological statement and you want to have something backing that up, yeah, it would be recommended to have epistemic access to the thing you're making claims about.
So I do have to have epistemic access.
You're saying you know without knowing. Like literally.
I'm still confused. It's a yes or no.
You can make whatever claim you want, Mike. That doesn't mean that it's substantiated.
So I can make the ontological claim that the universe is physical without having epistemic access to all things that are physical, right?
You can make whatever claim you want. That doesn't mean that there exists substantiation for that claim.
You're not answering me at all. I don't think, maybe you're not tracking, or you're just not answering correctly in a way that anybody can understand.
Can I claim that I'm a unicorn? Shout out to the comments.
That's not my question. My question is, do I have to have epistemic access to all physical facts to have to make an ontological claim about the physical realm?
Look, if you're trying to say that you can know something ontologically without knowing something epistemically, it's obviously a contradiction.
What's the contradiction?
Knowing, not knowing, because epistemic refers to knowledge.
You can have ontological knowledge without epistemic knowledge.
Yeah, how's that possible? Of what?
I can know you're conscious without being yourself conscious, without me being you.
You
Correct?
can know that I'm conscious?
Yes, I can claim that you're conscious without me actually being you.
Yeah, you can make claims. The question here is, do we know? We can beg the question. I can say you're conscious because I say so.
Is it possible? Okay, let me try this again. Is it possible to have ontological knowledge without epistemic knowledge?
No.
Why not?
Bro, give me one example of what you know ontologically without epistemic access.
That you're conscious.
That's not an ontological knowledge.
Yes,
bro.
it is. You are conscious. That's a physical claim about reality.
You don't know.
Your consciousness is physical.
You don't know that I am conscious. This is just one giant.
I can make the case that you are conscious and that consciousness is physical.
You can make an inductive case that I'm conscious, but you don't know that I'm conscious. Induction is not like...
So then that means I can have ontological knowledge without epistemic knowledge.
That's not ontology. Just because you are making the claim that I'm conscious is not an ontological understanding of any kind.
And I know you're physical without being you.
No, you don't know that.
So I can't claim that anything's physical without me being the object. I can't say that this bottle is physical without me being the bottle.
You can claim whatever you want. Whether the substantiation exists, that's a different question.
You're not answering. You're not answering. You're saying I have to have epistemic access, complete epistemic access to this bottle to know it's physical. Do you know what do you understand the claim you're making right now?
You have complete epistemic access to the bottle, Mike. It's all third person objectively describable. There's nothing hidden about the bottle.
I can't be these atoms though. That's the block. Right? I don't have.
I'm sorry.
I can't. My atoms are not. Hold on. This is my time. My atoms are not identical to these atoms, and so therefore there's an epistemic block between me and the bottle. I can't know what it's like to be the bottle.
Are you a panpsychist?
But I can still know it's. But I can still know it's. I can still claim it's physical.
Are you a panpsychist?
That's why, even without epistemic access, complete epistemic access, I can have ontological access.
Wait, are you a panpsychist now? Is there something it's like to be the bottle?
This is not your time to ask questions, sir.
That was a...
And no, I'm not a panpsychist. That kind of view is nonsense. So is your view nonsense. But I still have yet to hear why my view is false. You haven't demonstrated jack shit. You want to try? I can yield the time for you. You can try. So I yield my time.
Yeah, all right. Hold on.
Okay. You're yielding the rest of your time?
Yes.
Okay. And with that, that's going to conclude Mike's portion of the cross-examination. Alex, Kay, you're going to get 10 minutes to cross-examine Mike Brigandi, to basically ask questions to delegitimize his position and build up your position. Your 10 minutes starts whenever you say your first word.
Okay, so look, I want to play a clip from our back and forth. It kind of made sense to me. I might even agree with you. Let's see.
In the universe, you don't have epistemic access to that, not even in principle because of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Or how do you have epistemic access to what's happening beyond the cosmological horizon, where the expansion of the universe is happening faster than the speed of light? You can't. You don't have epistemic access to that. However, in both cases, we still have ontological access to what's happening to particles or the cosmological event horizon at the edge of the universe. We can still say those are both physical events happening that are operating under physical parameters. And that's why even though I'm not you, I can't be your atoms. I can't be any other person's atoms. I can't be in your mind. And so I don't have epistemic access to your mind, but that doesn't mean I'm blocked from being able to understand you ontologically. Universe. You can't. You don't have epistemic access to that.
Okay, so you can't be my atoms. So you can't know what it's like to be me, even in principle, right?
Correct. I can't know what it's like to be you, because that would be a logical contradiction for me to be your atoms. That's an identity error.
Even in principle?
It's a logical contradiction. I can't be you. I can't be your atoms.
No, that's not the question. You can't know what it's like to be me, even in principle, right?
I can know what it's like to be you, but I can't know you. I can't know you as in terms of being you.
So there's something irreducible about my experience that you don't have access to, right?
I don't have access to your atoms. I can't be your atoms.
Right. So there's an in principle epistemic gap, right?
Yes, and I acknowledge that in my opening statement, that there is an epistemic gap.
Yeah,
I can't be your atoms, but that doesn't mean I can't say you're still physical and that your consciousness is still physical.
Look, Mike, I have that video saved on my computer. You know what the title is?
It's kind of weird, but okay. What?
Checkmate.
What?
What a profoundly stupid thing to say for a reductionist. What a profoundly stupid thing to say for a reductionist. Look, identity theory says consciousness is nothing over and above a physical state. Weak emergence says higher level phenomena are fully reducible and, in principle, deducible from lower level physical facts. Therefore, identity theory plus weak emergence commits one to full reducibility and deducibility of consciousness in principle. Your view commits you to the idea that there will be a full mathematical theory of consciousness, including qualia, in principle. Admitting any irreducible aspect of qualia is to deny full reducibility and deducibility. Denying full reducibility abandons reductionism and commits you to a non-reductive position.
Is there a question here?
Hold on. Holding identity theory and weak emergence while admitting irreducible qualia is a direct contradiction. Your formulation of materialism is necessarily false.
Why? Why is it false?
GG's.
You just saying it's false. That's not an argument. Where's the question? What do you?
Direct contradiction.
Where's your cross-examination?
You admitted
just monologued.
You admitted of irreducibility while simultaneously affirming reducibility. You're done, bro. You're cooked. GG.
What? Everything's reducible to physics. That doesn't mean that it necessarily means I must have epistemic access to you in everything about the physical world. This is what you just tried to avoid before.
It absolutely does in principle. Look, look, I can say it again if you didn't track, right? Reductionism is committed to the view that it's in principle, that everything about my experience is in principle reducible. There can be no gap. This is why nobody holds to reductionism.
What do you mean there can't be no gap? Why can't there be an epistemic gap and yet things
not
be
in
still
principle.
physical?
Not in principle.
Not? Why can't there be an epistemic gap?
Because you're
why
not
must I know what it's like to be you, to know that you're physical?
Do me a favor, define weak emergence.
A novel property that is reducible to physics. There's no new ontology.
No. It's logically deducible from physics.
Yeah, there's no new ontology.
Right. So, but it's a novel property that's fully determined by the underlying
laws. I can make the inductive case for consciousness in that manner.
Not if you're a reductionist, Mike. You admitted of an in principle gap. You're done. So look, can you define strong emergence for me?
A novel property in which it is not deducible strictly from logical.
Yeah. So which one are you holding to right now?
I'm a weak immersion test.
Yeah. You're done, bro. Look, everything, the conversation as played out.
Show me how I'm done. Can you give the logical syllogism for that? The formalized version of the argument?
Dude, look, it's a contradiction. You want to be a reductionist.
Where's the contradiction? Where?
I'm trying to tell you. You want to be a reductionist while affirming irreducibility. It's really simple, dude.
Where did I affirm irreducibility?
Look, everybody here, look, judges. I know you guys heard that whole conversation. I played the video. You admitted of an in-principle gap because you can't know what it's like to be me because you're not my atoms. That's not reductionism, Mike.
That's an epistemic claim, not an ontological claim. Physicalism is not an epistemic claim in itself. It's an ontological claim.
Yeah, look, man, I can't help you.
That's a category error to say that I have to know everything epistemically.
Not if you're a reductionist. In principle, everything is knowable. In principle,
there's nothing in reductionism that says it must necessitate me having epistemic access to all things. That makes no sense. No philosopher agrees to this. No philosopher agrees to this nonsense.
Reclaiming my time. Right? So in principle, yes, that's exactly what reductionism is. Everything is describable in third-person objective language, in principle. You admitted that.
I agree to that. I agree that everything's.
No, Mike. You admitted that my experience is irreducible.
No, I didn't. It is reducible. It's just epistemically blocked from me. I can't be your atoms. I can't be your atoms.
It's being live streamed, bro. That's an in-principle gap. You just don't get it.
There's no ontological gap. That's the point you have to raise. If you keep giving me epistemic gaps, then that doesn't do a thing for my view.
You're the one supposed to be meeting the logical burden of reductionism. You conceded. Your whole theory is incoherent. You hold a true contradiction.
I didn't concede a damn thing because I agree that
you gave up on reductionism. You gave up on reductionism when you said that there's an in-principle gap. You're done, bro.
It's epistemic gap, not an ontological one. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep making the same category mistake?
Doesn't matter. Reduction is committed to the view that everything is fully reducible.
Ontologically, not epistemically.
Bro, Mike, you're just making yourself sound dumb now, bro. So look, even though this is already over, we can, I guess, play the rest of this out as a formality. Let's see.
Okay. This makes no sense. You're making a category error. You're not saying that. That makes no sense what you just said.
So look, bioelectricity is just the movement of charged ions across a membrane. So why would the movement of a sodium ion feel like the smell of a rose?
That's like asking why are cats cats? It's the process itself is the experience of that smell. The bioelectricity is itself identical to the experience.
Yeah, we know the point. We know the claim, Mike. But why?
Okay, when you ask me why, that's like asking why is air? Why is water water?
It's not. Reclaiming my time.
They're identical. They're identical.
Reclaiming my time. There's a conceptual disparity between the smell of a rose and the properties associated with bioelectricity. Bridge that gap for me.
Is it an ontological gap or an epistemic gap?
Look,
which one?
Look, so if identity theory is true, then phenomenal consciousness is identical to some physical property or state, right? So what that means by the principle of indiscernibility, or the indiscernibility of identicals, is that if A is identical to B, then every property of A is identical to every property of B, or every essential feature of A is identical to every essential feature of B. But when I imagine a red triangle in my brain, you cannot find redness or triangleness in the brain. Or I'm sorry, when I imagine a red triangle in my mind, you cannot.
Said you're going to find an elephant in your brain if you think of an elephant. Nobody said that. We're saying the bioelectrical processes are the experience.
Reclaiming my time. The problem is that you're claiming identity, which comes with the logical burden that all properties must match. It has to hold in all worlds, all possible worlds. It is a necessary condition that all properties are identical. But my thoughts have different properties than my brain. There's no weight of a thought. There's no length of an emotion. It's not identical.
There's no weight to a fucking electron in the sense that we can weigh electrons. It's not possible to do that practically, right? But thoughts are still physical things. Why? Because they're oscillations of electrochemical signals. They're still physical things, and they are the experience itself.
Oh, we have to cut it right there. And with that, we're going to move to the second round of cross-examination. So, Mike, you're going to get another 10 minutes to do your cross-examination. This is your period to ask questions and delegitimize your opponent, as well as establish your position. Your 10 minutes will start whenever you say your first word.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, my only question is why. Actually, how about this, Alex? Can you give me the actual formalized argument as to where I made my contradiction? Go ahead.
If reductive physicalism is true, everything is reducible in principle. Everything is not reducible in principle, therefore reductive physicalism is false.
But I don't hold to any of those beliefs. I don't hold to that they're irreducible. So that's not a contradiction.
You already admitted to that, bro.
No, that's not my position.
know
Let me
what it's like to
make
be
it clear. Let me make it clear again for you. I think that everything's reducible to physics. Try again. Try to render the actual contradiction.
Look, I knew you were going to wiggle, right? Because everybody does when you catch them in a contradiction. But
where is the give the formalized contradiction?
just did.
That's not my view. That's a straw man.
It's not a straw man. You already admitted of a permanent.
I don't think things are irreducible. I don't think things are
you can't
irreducible.
know what it's like to be me because you're not my atoms. Look, you're the only one falling for this, bro. Everybody knows.
Okay,
everybody else knows.
I give my time. I want my time back. Okay. So you're saying because I don't know what it's like to be your atoms. Therefore, what follows from that is that physicalism is false.
Your formulation of physicalism is certainly false because you're a reductionist. If you cannot reduce, you're done.
Let me try this again. You said what you're implying is that because I cannot, there is an epistemic gap between me and you because I can't be your atoms. That means that that physicalism is false. Yes or no?
Yes. Your formulation of physicalism is definitively false.
I just take this to be a complete non sequitur, just because I don't have epistemic access to your atoms, which is literally not logically possible. I can't be you.
I grant that. Which is why I'm not a reductionist. You freaking dirt.
You're not giving a contradiction in my view. You're giving some kind of performative contradiction.
P and not P is reduction.
To some other kind of view. I take back my time.
Reduction, non-reduction.
I take back my time. So you're not giving me an actual contradiction in my view. You're giving some kind of performative contradiction in some other person's view. So try again. In my view, where is the contradiction?
Reduction, non-reduction. When you say
okay, let me try this then. Where do I think that things are not reductive?
Yeah, when you say that you can't be me because you're not my atoms, even in principle.
Okay, so I can't be your atoms. Okay, so I take back my time. I take back my time.
I've got to finish answering your question.
No, you don't.
He is taking back his time. Go ahead, Mike.
So what you're saying is I can't be your atoms, therefore things are not reducible to physics? Or therefore things can't be reducible to physics because I can't be your atoms?
No, Mike.
Then what are you saying?
If you cannot know what it's like to be my atoms, you're admitting of a permanent irreducibility in principle. You are no longer a reductionist. Have a good night.
So because I can't because I can't do things beyond the laws of physics, beyond the laws of logic, because I cannot defy the laws of logic, therefore you're correct and physicalism is incorrect? That makes no sense.
That was incoherent. What?
The reason why it's logically incoherent is because I can't be your atoms. My atoms are distinct from your atoms. They're not distinct. They're not identical. And
which
so
is
that would be an identity error for me to say that I could be your atoms. So that's necessarily going to be the case. Hold on, I take back my time. It's necessarily going to be the case that there's an epistemic gap because I literally cannot be your atoms. That's just logically conclusive from this. But this has nothing to do with the ontology of physicalism. So you're not making this at all coherent for us.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that you have to be my atoms. I'm saying that you have to know what it's like to be my atoms for reductionism to be true in principle. It has to be, there can't be any epistemic access issues.
Oh, okay. So
It's really simple.
Then it comes back to what I said about Mary and the knowledge argument. Your phenomenal experience is not a fact in the same way that a physical fact is going to be, right? If I were to experience you, that wouldn't be new knowledge, physical knowledge. That would just be the case that I had a new access, a new mode of presentation of the physical facts. I was not introduced to new facts about the physical world. So that's why you're also confused. What's your response to that?
What does that have to do with irreducibility?
I just showed you why your view is incorrect. Why, in the case of the Mary example, I gave the ability response, which means that there are no physical facts that are known if I were to be your atoms. And so that's why things are still reducible to physics, even if I can't epistemically be your atoms.
Is that supposed to be some kind of explanation?
It's the counter argument that defeats your view.
No, look, I mean, you still said that it's in principle irreducible. It doesn't matter. Look,
Yes, it's reducible to physical facts. But I don't take like experiencing the color red as a new physical fact. If I were to experience it, I would take that as an aspect, a new access of a physical fact, not a physical fact in itself.
it doesn't matter, dude. If there's
It
anything
completely matters. It completely matters because what you're saying is I have to have that, but I don't, because I don't take what you're saying is those experiential facts are physical facts. I disagree. I don't take experiential facts to be things. I take it to be that I'm accessing something about physical facts when I experience.
Mm-hmm. So why is it not reducible to physics?
It is reducible to physics. That's the entire point. That's why my view is far more coherent and cohesive.
You already admitted that there's something it's like to be me that's irreducible because you can't be my atoms. And now you're clearly just wiggling.
You're not tracking then, right? What I'm saying is I can't be your atoms. I can't experience the way you experience the world, but that doesn't mean I can't reduce it to physical, because physical facts are irrelevant to your experience.
Okay. Look, well, actually, it's still your time. Go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. I yield my time.
Okay, with that, you have 2 minutes and 7 seconds on the clock. We're going to end it there, and then Alex, you're going to do your 10 minutes for the cross-examination. This is your time to ask questions, delegitimize your opponent, establish your position, and then after that, we're going to move on to conclusions. So your 10 minutes starts whenever you say your first word.
Okay, look, I want to be very clear about what Mike's committed to. He's committed to identity theory plus weak emergence. Right? As I said before, there can be no epistemic gap in principle. In practice, that's a different question. But when he says he can't know what it's like to be me because he can't be my atoms, he's sensing intuitively that it's impossible to access my experience. Right? Which I grant. But somehow he still thinks that he can be a reductionist at the same time. And his whole response to Mary's room is like, I guess some kind of phenomenal concept strategy, right? But that's not compatible with weak emergence and identity theory either. Because what it's saying is there's this permanent epistemic gap because of the ways we refer to things. I'm not even sure if he's trying to take some phenomenal concept strategy. He's just saying, yeah, we saw it a different way. But look, let me ask you this, Mike. So all that aside, his whole thesis is incoherent. The contradiction is reduction, non-reduction. Okay. But that being said, Mike, is it conceivable to you that I'm an NPC?
Not only is it conceivable, it's probably true.
That's funny. So look, if identity theory is true, then phenomenal consciousness is identical to some property or state. If phenomenal consciousness is identical to a physical property, then it is logically impossible for that physical property to exist without phenomenal consciousness. And this is Leibniz's law. So a world physically identical to ours but lacking phenomenal consciousness is positively conceivable without contradiction. If a scenario is positively conceivable without contradiction, then it is logically possible. Therefore, it is logically possible for all physical facts to obtain without phenomenal consciousness. Therefore, phenomenal consciousness is not identical to any physical property. Therefore, identity theory is false. So, look, if X and Y share all properties, if X is identical to Y, then X and Y must share all properties in all possible worlds. In every other identity, this is the case, like water is H2O. If there's some possible world where physical states exist without consciousness, if it's conceivable to you that I'm a pea zombie, this means identity is false.
Can I respond to this?
I don't expect you to understand that, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you're raising up a philosophical zombie issue. The answer to this is very simple, actually. Yeah, maybe I can conceive of philosophical zombie, but it's not metaphysically possible. It doesn't follow because I can conceive of it logically that it is therefore metaphysically possible. So no, that's a non sequitur.
Okay, reclaiming my time. Look, you don't understand the Leibniz's law. Okay, it has to hold in all possible worlds. You can say that it's not metaphysically possible, but it's just begging the question, why is it not metaphysically possible if it's logically possible? You're going to say, because the identity of consciousness is brain states. It's just begging the question, do you have some logical bridge?
It's not begging the question. That's my view. That's just my view. You have yet to raise an argument as to why it's
literally
not
begging the question. That's just my view. Why did you want this debate so bad?
Alex, you think if I believe that physicalism is true, that means I'm begging the question? No. That's just the position I hold.
That's the position I hold.
That's not question begging. Question begging is if I were to render an argument in which a conclusion is in my premises. That's not, but I didn't do that. It's just that my position.
You're making an identity claim.
Philosophical zombies are not metaphysically possible. That's just what comes out of the physics.
Reclaiming. You're making an identity claim. You're making an identity claim. This comes with certain logical commitments. The identity must hold in all possible worlds. You admitted that you think I'm an NPC. That right there means that consciousness is not identical to bioelectricity.
How does that follow? What? No.
If my physical states can exist without consciousness, it's not identical.
Say that again?
If my physical states can exist, if my bioelectricity can exist without consciousness, it's obviously not identical.
Oh, yeah, I just take it to be the case that there would be bioelectricity in that being if it exhibited the same exact behaviors we'd have with the same atoms that we have. I wouldn't take it to be metaphysically possible for that to happen. That's why I reject philosophical zombies.
Yeah, look, if you want to say that it's not metaphysically possible, right, that's not a response, right? The necessitation.
That's just what comes out of my physical view.
Excuse me. The necessitation is that it logically holds in all possible worlds.
That's a logical possibility. That's a logical.
Excuse me. If you want to say that it's not metaphysically possible, you're just begging the question, why? Why is it not metaphysically possible?
Because my view is that philosophical zombies would be physical entities, and that bioelectricity would arise in that being if it had the same exact atoms as you and me. It's just what comes out of the physics.
Yeah, look, Mike, this is going real bad for you, bro.
That's your counter? It's going bad for you, bro.
Let me ask you a different question.
That's your best counter?
Yeah, I mean,
that's absurd.
I've exhaustively described.
You haven't shown why it's metaphysically
why
it must be metaphysically possible.
My time.
You haven't shown that.
My time. Let me ask you a question. If science cannot articulate the explanandum, how could it possibly articulate an explanation?
If science can't articulate an explanandum, how can it not articulate an explanation? I take those to be the same things.
If science, let me ask you again. If science cannot articulate the explanandum, which means the thing to be explained, how could it possibly articulate an explanation?
Well, it would have no explanation, but I did give an explanation for consciousness. You just didn't want to accept it.
Yeah, but here's the problem.
Which you're a poet.
Here's the problem. Qualia is irreducible. You cannot articulate qualia. Therefore, you cannot explain qualia. Therefore, materialism is false.
Qualia is just subjective experience, which I take to be bioelectrical phenomena in the brain.
Question. We know what your view is, Mike. We're asking you for a logical demonstration, bro, and you're falling asleep at the wheel.
We have an entire field of neuroscience that demonstrates huge amounts of correlative data, which we make the inductive case for, that the brain has to do with consciousness. If we poke your brain, we can induce certain experiences.
It's not your time.
If we damage your brain, we can damage your experience.
Look, bro,
the correlative
I'm not a reductionist.
case is so strong.
Look. You're a reductionist committed to identity theory and weak emergence. This is not induction,
saying that
my boy.
over and over again.
This is not induction, my boy. You have logical burden. Apparently you were completely unaware of, which is why, listen, bruh.
Dude, I acknowledge the
So let me ask you a different question.
The logical burden.
Let me ask you a different question. Let me ask you a different reclaiming. Hey, can the color blue emerge from some arrangement of triangles? Like, can I just get some triangles and arrange them in a complicated enough? Excuse me. Can I just get a bunch of triangles and arrange them in a complicated enough manner, and the color blue will magically emerge?
No, I don't think so.
Right. So that's the same thing as saying that qualia emerges from physical process.
No. Are you kidding me? Triangles are not the same thing as neurons in a brain, in a membrane. That's completely different.
Triangles can absolutely. Triangles can absolutely be described in the same type of language as neurons. Third person objective.
What? Do that.
Look,
do that for
quiet,
us.
dude.
Do that
be
for
quiet.
us.
It's not your time.
I'd love to show that.
It's not your time. So look, what I'm demonstrating here with that example is the categorical incommensurability between the way we refer to phenomenal properties.
You're just regurgitating Bernardo Castro.
And the way we refer to physical, bro. The way we refer to physical properties, there's a categorical incommensurability. It is illogical to expect blue to pop out of some arrangement of triangles in the same way that it's illogical to expect first-person subjective experience to pop out of some amalgamation of third-person describable processes.
That's an argument from incredulity. You're just saying, I don't know how this could be, therefore it's false.
No, it's logically impossible.
Where's the contradiction then?
Yield my time.
Okay. And with that, that's going to end Alex K's time. With that, that's 2 rounds of cross-examination along with the rebuttal and the openers. We're going to now move on to the concluding statements. And then after this, we're going to do audience questions, comments, concerns, and critiques. Mike Brigandi, you're going to get 4 minutes to do your closing statements, and they start whenever you say your first word.
Yeah, so my opponent was supposed to demonstrate a fatal flaw in physicalism, in my view, or a fatal flaw in the sense that I can't explain consciousness. He didn't do a damn thing to demonstrate that. He kept strawmanning. He kept making ridiculous arguments that he couldn't formalize properly and give any kind of contradiction. He had to keep strawmanning. Then he said triangles can't be, we have a bunch of triangles and that can give rise to electricity. But obviously triangles are not the same thing as neurons. Neurons is going to be a type of physical entity that is largely distinct from triangles. And so, yeah, neurons can clearly generate consciousness in a certain physical setting. And so, yeah, my opponent did nothing at all today to show why my view is incorrect. He kept pointing to an epistemic gap. And I agree that there's an epistemic gap in the sense that I can't be your atoms, but that doesn't mean that therefore I can't know that things are physical in the universe, or that I can't claim that the universe's ontological status is physical. Let's see. He kept saying I have to deduce it from basic physical equations and math, but you can't do that for anything. I mean, in a practical sense. And I think he actually, during the debate, he actually conceded this, that I don't need to deduce experience from physical facts in principle. Practically, I don't have to do it practically. It's not possible to do it practically. I agree. You can't practically deduce this cup of water from pure math or physical equations. It's just not possible to do that in a practical sense. And so that's why I raised up that practical undeducibility response. So I think I gave very valid responses to my opponent's views. He could not contrive any kind of contradiction. He could not contrive even a single flaw in my view that was coherent, because, to be frank, I don't think he actually tracked my view. I don't think he actually understands my view. He just seems like a minion of Bernardo Kastrup, the Timu Sinbad, who doesn't have himself a coherent view. Which, by the way, I would love to debate about that and offensively attack your view instead of you just doing nothing to attack my view, right? But yeah, anyway. So, yeah, I don't think that my opponent did a single thing to actually render my view incomplete or false, let alone contradictory. And yeah, with that, thanks for having me, and I yield my time.
Okay, thank you for your closing statements with 57 seconds on the clock. Alex, you're going to get 4 minutes to do your closing statements, and they start whenever you say your first word.
Yeah, so look, Mike, I'm not sure why you pushed so hard for this debate. I really didn't even feel like doing this, bro. But anybody who holds to a materialist position should be embarrassed by this. This wasn't even a debate. This was an education session. Mike is not familiar with the burden that his own position commits him to. The moment my opponent said he can never know what it's like to be me because he doesn't have my atoms, the debate was already over. He just didn't realize it. The statement concedes a permanent epistemic gap in principle, not a temporary scientific ignorance. A permanent gap is incompatible with the materialist identity thesis he's defending. If consciousness were identical to physical states, then knowing all the physical facts would, in principle, reveal all the mental facts. Identity requires that the facts align across all possible worlds without remainder. The minute he admitted an irreducible what it's like that cannot even in theory be captured through physical description, he abandoned identity theory and slid straight into property dualism, or some non-reductive physicalism, the very position he claimed to reject. At that exact moment, his specific position collapsed into incoherency. An incoherent theory simply cannot be considered an explanation. From there, everything else we discussed, Mary's room, the conceivability of zombies, the Leibniz's law objections, only drove the wedge deeper. Mary's room shows that knowing all the physical facts don't necessarily yield phenomenal truths. Zombies show that the physical doesn't necessitate the experiential. Leibniz's law shows that if two things differ even in one property, they cannot be identical. This is trivial. Each argument independently exposes the same contradiction. If physics doesn't logically entail consciousness, then consciousness is not identical to the physical. So while we walk through the classic arguments for completeness, the real turning point happened when he affirmed an insurmountable divide between the physical description of a system and the qualitative experience of that system. That is the definition of a failure of identity. That is the definition of a non-reductive view. That is the moment materialism ceased to be a contender. The hard problem isn't hard because we haven't mapped enough neurons. It's hard because physical descriptions and conscious experience are categorically different kinds of facts. Once you grant a permanent epistemic gap, even implicitly, you've already admitted exactly that. So look, I just want to say also, all this is the result of the presupposition that the physical gives rise to the mental. That's not a scientific statement. That's a philosophical belief system. right? We measure the world with our sense perceptions. We use our mind to come up with the concept of physical. And then we conceptually remove, right, all experiential properties by saying the only way to refer to the quote unquote objective physical world is with third person facts. We necessarily subtract consciousness from that picture, thinking that we can get it back somehow. It's like the painter painting a portrait and then pointing at the portrait and saying, hey, that's me. It's obviously not you. It's a map of you. It's a representation. Physicalism cannot account for experience because of the way physical is defined. It says the world is only composed of physical entities. Physical entities are only describable in third-person objective language, the language of physics. Third-person objective language does not contain subjective experience. It simply cannot. I yield.
Okay, and with that, that's going to be the end of your time. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude the entire debate. And so good job to both of the debaters. You guys did very well. Judges, this would be your time to conclude your scores, get your scores ready, and then eventually I'm going to ask for your votes on who you think the winner is. I'm going to start a poll for the audience poll so the audience can vote on who they think the winner is. And judges, it's up to you. We can get your judgments done right now, or we can do audience comments, questions, concerns, and critiques.
I personally would prefer after the audience. There's a lot to go through here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. Are you guys okay if I drop you guys for a sec to get some space on the panel and then bring you guys up whenever you're ready? Or I guess I guess I could do like one at a time.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
We're gonna do like a
That's probably the best.
Oh, no.
That's probably the best method. Yeah.
Okay. I'll do that actually. Bobby, do you want to go first? Do you have any comments, questions, concerns, or critiques? Oh, Bobby, you there? Oh, okay. I'm gonna drop you, Bobby. But I'll bring you back later. And then I'm gonna go through the guest requests. What were you saying?
Dang it, Bobby.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna go with this person.
Listen, Bobby, vegetarians are not to be trusted.
Oh, that didn't work. Okay, I'm gonna go with. Oh, okay. What you got for us, Bat? Comments, questions, concerns, or critiques?
Yeah. What would you say is like the word that place holds for like an adult human female? Like the definition adult human female. What word can I substitute that definition with?
That's not in relation to this debate that we're having. Could you ask a question in regards to like the debate topic?
Oh, sorry. I thought you guys are having those trans debates again.
I mean,
Yeah,
clearly.
'cause I always see Mike, and I always think transgender when I see Mike.
Do you have anything in regards to the debate that just happened? Okay, yeah, that's probably for the best. Thank you, mods. I was about to drop him. Guys, clearly we had a debate on materialism explaining consciousness. Let's keep the questions to this debate, not any other debates. That was ridiculous. But Live, what do you got for us?
Liv, hey, so
Sorry.
no, you're good. So I think Mike won this pretty handedly, to be honest. I think it's pretty bad execution from Alex, but so I guess I would ask a question for Alex. So basically, where's the contradiction with this, the sort of like philosophical zombies in Mike's worldview? He holds an identity theory. So if they have the same atoms as humans, consciousness would arise from that, right? It's just, and this would kind of also explain why when an individual takes psychedelics, or if you bring a lesion into the brain, that alters perception and whatnot. So I feel like you failed to execute a certain how should I say, a contradiction, right? So can you show the P and not P in Mike's worldview in that sense?
Yeah, so if consciousness is identical to bioelectricity, right, that means that it applies in all possible worlds. If you can conceive of a world where bioelectricity exists with no consciousness, that means it's logically I mean, I gave a whole syllogism on this, bro. It's not identical if it can exist without. Identical, not identical. Like, I get that the claim is that he wants to say that it's identical. The problem is that he can't demonstrate that it's identical.
Yeah. So again, can you show how it's metaphysically impossible? And again, and Mike, if you wanna step in, feel free. I just don't see how it's.
I don't need to show that it's metaphysically impossible. I need to show that it's logically possible, right? This just goes
Something
to
can
Leibniz.
be logically possible, but not metaphysically possible. That's
Yeah.
my point. Philosophical
Why is it
zombies
not
wouldn't
metaphysically
exist under my view, and so you can't use it as a counter argument.
The problem is
It just doesn't work.
You can't give any answer of why it's metaphysically impossible other than just begging the question.
Because they have the same exact atoms as me and you in the same configuration. It necessarily follows from physics that they will be conscious.
Yeah, it necessarily follows from an identity statement that it's necessary in all possible worlds. I don't know what to tell you, bro.
Now you're shifting the modal scope into logic. We're talking about metaphysics.
We've been talking. It was modal.
The
whole. What are you
metaphysics is not compatible with my
Look, we
view.
already
That's
debated
why
it.
you can't use that argument. It
All
doesn't
right,
work.
with that, we do have to move on to the next audience guest. But real quick announcement: the poll is up. It's right there in the corner. You're going to see a blue and white clipboard. You guys can vote on the poll. Let me know if you guys can see that.
Wait, Compass. Can I didn't get the second part of my question addressed. How does he justify the way psychedelics alters perception, or the way lesions alters perception? I don't see how that follows in his worldview, but I see how it falls in Mike's worldview.
Okay, go ahead, Alex, and then we'll move on from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant to this debate, but we would just say, it's going to be hard to understand if you've never looked into idealism, right? But it's very simple. Everything is mental, including a psychedelic compound. We call it a psychedelic. That's how it represents to our sense perceptions. So a psychedelic affecting my brain is one mental process affecting another.
Yes, but
it's going to be hard for you to intuit if you're stuck in materialism.
no, but scientifically, we know when you take a psychedelic, that is altering the physical aspect of the brain, right? So this works in Mike's worldview. In your worldview, you're kind of begging the question. You're saying it is a mental process. How do you know? How is it a mental process?
You're begging the question when you say it's a physical process. I say it's
it
a
does
mental
not change
process.
the.
You're
it
doing
changes
an
the
internal.
environment.
Listen, man. Listen. You're doing an internal critique on my view, right?
Right.
You have to adopt my language. Everything is mental. Physical processes are only appearances within consciousness.
Okay,
right?
but
So
we know
physical, physical is what it looks like to you because you have human sense perceptions. Physical is how you interpret the world. So when you see the mental process that we call psychedelic, right, and you ingest that mental process, you are also a mental process. It's one mental process affecting another.
Okay, does psychedelics affect the physical properties of the brain?
Answer that, and we do have to move on.
I don't grant physical properties under my view.
All right, bro.
All right, we do have to
Congrats.
move on to the other guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming up, and come back anytime. And let's see, next person I was gonna let up. Let's see.
Playing with a bird, but also I have
What's up, Game of Dawn?
Yeah, sorry, I have 3 questions. One for Alex, one for Mike, and one for both of them. So the first question I'm going to ask is Alex, which is, it seems like there are a lot of brain structures that are very similar and that we can invoke what seems to be described as the same qualia between people. What are your thoughts on there being like an inductive case that could be made that, hey, so many of these structures seem to result in people explaining very similar qualia in very similar cultures, which further means that they seem to be talking about the same thing. Do you think that, even though there's an epistemic gap, do you think that, like there always is with induction as well, do you think that that would be a valid type of argument to show that physicalism can explain what's it called again? Mental states.
No. And for the simple reason of how everything else is done, how we explain other emergent properties, right? So the emergent property of like wetness, for example, is fully reducible and deducible in principle, right? So if we want to make some kind of inductive case, and we want to say that it's not deducible in principle, right? That's going to launch you into at least non-reductive physicalism, which relies on strong emergence, or into property dualism, right? So we're having a different conversation. Strong emergence is.
I'm going to cut you off there. I have 40 seconds left, and I want to ask Mike Brigandi a question. So you said that there are no such thing as philosophical zombies in your worldview, and you talked about how consciousness and bioelectric stuff is related. Now, could someone, let's say, build a automaton filled with gears, very tiny nano gears, and this automaton would express all the same things that we would see from a human? Would you say this is a philosophical zombie, or would you say, even though it's purely mechanical, because the systems are similar enough, and it expresses, assuming that it expresses itself very similarly as like humans, would you say that is a philosophical zombie, or would you say, well, that probably also has some form of consciousness because of the elaborate network of gears?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if that would be conscious. The only way in which we know consciousness exists is going to be motivated by the neuroscience, and that's going to be a biological case. In the case of other types of atoms and aggregates of structures, I don't know. It could be the case that somehow that consciousness emerges in that, but I don't see how it could. It's not very intuitive to me that that would be the case.
If it could be the case, it's not identical to bioelectricity, dude. Jesus.
Who said you can interject here? I don't know. Anyway, is that your only question? Did I answer that question?
I have one last question for both of
Go
you.
for it.
How do you feel about the proposition that physicalism and idealism, at least an analytical idealism, end up breaking down into the exact same claims, and both of these not metaphysical claims aren't actually predictive in any way? They're just trying to say a statement or about reality, specifically a metaphysical statement, that can't actually be solved. So in the end, we should be quietists on the position of idealism versus physicalism, especially because we don't need to take a hard stance like that to do things like science.
Who's that for?
Both of you guys.
Okay, so yeah, I don't think idealism or physicalism is an attempt at prediction anyway. I think that's where science comes in. I think physicalism or idealism is an attempt at description. It's metaphysics, right? So it's taking the meta view of, you could say,
just to clarify, the thing that I'm kind of focusing on is what are your thoughts on quietism when it comes to idealism versus physicalism? In the sense that, well, why we shouldn't discuss this because it's metaphysical nonsense.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's nonsense, right? Like, I mean, I think it's fair to be agnostic or a quietist. But metaphysics definitely steers the world, even if you don't like explicitly have a metaphysical position, you have an implicit one. It's very important to the way we move around the world. I don't think you can't prove it, right? You can't prove physicalism, you can't prove idealism, but you can certainly be less wrong.
And Mike, answer, and then we'll move on to the next guest.
Yeah, I think what idealism attempts to do is try to say, well, we have all the science and it fits with my perspective here. But the problem is that there are some expectations that idealism has that we just don't see in the world, or kind of fuzzier than physicalism. So that's why I don't take the quietist position. I'm a part physicalist. How do we get dissociated states from one big mind? If everything's one big mind, we'd expect consciousness experiences to overlap in certain ways. If the brain has nothing to do with it, we would expect there to be some kind of overlapping between experiences. We'd expect even perhaps teleology.
Sorry, can we just answer the guy's question, because this is a straw man? Like, this has nothing to do with this question.
Right? Okay. But go ahead, Mike.
Did it answer your question, Dream? Or no?
Sorry, I'm taking care of a bird at the same time, so I couldn't listen to it. I'm so sorry. Here's the bird as recompense. It's playing with a quarter.
Okay, one more time, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that idealism has expectations that are just not met. We'd expect there to be certain things like dissociated states from a single mind.
Opportunity for
We
Mike
don't
to
really
set up
see
the
the mechanism for that. We don't see how that could be the case. We would expect to see overlapping in experiences.
Has nothing to do with the dude's
So would
question.
it be fair to say
Wait. We
that
do have to
you're
move
not a
on.
quietist because you believe idealism creates certain expectations of how the world works, which it doesn't? Stop biting the carpet, you asshole.
Well, hold on, Dream. We do have to move on after that question, but maybe later. You could probably ask.
Okay, sound good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for coming up. Judges, you guys doing okay, or do you need more time? Oh, you guys doing okay, judges, or do you need more time to come up with your scores?
I think we're good.
Oh, you guys are good to go.
I'd vote. I'd vote to go on with the voting process. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do the voting process, and then we'll get some more comments, questions, concerns, and critiques done. But yeah, so which of the judges would like to go first? Anyone?
I'll go. I won.
Oh, well, Mike's very confident. He thinks that he won. But whoever wants to go first, don't all jump at me at one time. But
Bueller.
I'll go ahead and go first.
Go for it.
Okay, so first, I appreciate you hosting. You did a great job. Very smooth, very direct. So just wanted to shout out to you. Mike, I'm a fan of your content. I think you're a very intelligent dude, and I like your style of science. Also, thumbs up to the book that you've written. Well done. Alex, it's always a pleasure to hear you in argument mode. When it comes to the debate, I'm looking at the opening arguments first and foremost. So with the opening, I'm going to go back and refer to some of the specific things that were said. So, Mike, you were saying that one of the statements that you made in your opening is that your opponent, Alex, is going to claim that he claims that Alex needs to have to expose or explain the ontological gap that idealists are asserting. And you also brought up your rendition of Mary's Room, where you claim that Mary did not learn anything new from an epistemic perspective, just that she had experienced what she already knew from a different perspective. And I'm not going to critique the view because that's different. That would be like I think, meta debate. I think I'm focused on the points that were made in terms of the merit of where you were going with the debate. So I have to give you points in that you were very clear in identifying the specific strategies that your opponent was going to be working and address them right off the bat. So that was a point to you I gave in regards to the opening there. I think that overall, just to distill it down, that your opening was stronger overall because you were much more pointed, clear, and precise in regards to what you were dismantling and what you were defending. Alex, I think that the opening that you gave was well structured, that you articulated it very well, but I don't feel like you had the same level of distinction that Mike did in regards to the specifics that you were getting at least in a way that would be clearly apprehensible. So I would give the opening to Mike. When it comes to the argument, Mike, you are making an argument primarily, if I'm distilling it down, that there needs to be epistemic access in order to make an ontological claim, and that the burden there would be too great. Again, I'm not going to be critiquing the statements in and of themselves. What I'm looking at is that from the argument perspective, when there was the cross, I think that Alex did a much better job in identifying the specific points that were, in his view, unresolved. When it comes to the counter, Mike, when you were saying these are the things that I feel were unresolved, I don't feel that those things were laid out as clearly as your opponent, that you didn't really drive into the gaps that you saw from his point of view, that it was more so your expression of what you disagreed with and your viewpoint in that regard. Whereas Alex, I felt that you were much more precise and pointed when it came to the specifics of the gaps and why those were not, why they were unresolved, given not just your perspective, but also the overall perspective of the philosophical standpoint. So I would give the argumentation and cross to Alex. When it comes to the closing, I felt the closing was certainly something that Mike did a decent job with, because he was staying true to what he was saying in regards to there being a lack of clarity when it comes to why there was a contradiction, that he didn't see any contradiction, and therefore his view remained unchallenged. When it comes to Alex, I feel that Alex did a very sufficient job in identifying why he felt it was something that was unresolved when it comes to there being the contradiction in regards to things. Specifically, to be precise, there was the whole issue of the neural correlates of consciousness and the highlighting of the patterns of correlation, and that there was a failure to establish identity, causation, or explanatory completeness for consciousness deriving solely from brain states. And the argument that was going back and forth was not, and at no point did I see Mike address directly how neural correlates of consciousness was supporting a scientific standard of reproducibility in regards to, one, consciousness itself, but outside of correlation, or how there was any state of predictability, or addressing the fact that there is a lack of reducibility. So these are just the points that I didn't see he was directly acknowledging, but questioning why those would matter or how that was sufficient in terms of how it was delivered. So I would give that overall to Alex. So I would say, from my perspective in regards to the debate, I think that Alex did a better job in presenting the core issues that he felt were unresolved from his opponent, and I would give it to Alex.
Okay. Thank you for your judgment, Placide. Very thorough, and I definitely do appreciate how seriously you took the debate, and I always appreciate your thorough and very serious judgments. Thank you. And then, which judge would like to go next? Any one of you guys? Any one of you guys? Whomever? Oh, don't all jump at me at once. You guys doing good?
I'll go ahead and go.
Go for it.
So, I feel as if going throughout the debate, starting with the openers, Mike did a very good job of setting up everything, being able to account for certain arguments before they were laid out, and it's a good, like, real fortification of the stance here. While I do also feel like Alex was able to kind of point at the gap, again, Mike did a pretty good job of setting that up beforehand and addressing this epistemological gap. Now, while I do feel like that is a really good thing to attack, I feel, and I did not see a larger emphasis throughout the rest of the debate to be able to actually poke at that problem of that epistemological gap. Everything can kind of, as Mike was explaining it, he was defending it very well throughout parts of the cross-examination. And I feel that there are many hooks that could be used in order to attack the physicalist position, such as the philosophical zombies and Mary's Room. There would be parts where there were a lot of instances where those could be used to show the fault of the materialistic position. However, it seemed to lack certain substances or certain emphases to actually shake the foundations, and Mike was able to explain, at least in parts, at least in parts, to be able to defend against those issues. And when it comes to the conclusion, it seems that Mike was still able to defend those as well, being able to summarize how the foundation itself of materialism was still not shaken with those questions. TLDR, a lot of good points from Alex, but not enough emphasis from those points to be able to shake the materialism as a whole. So for me, I'm going to give the point to Mike.
Oh, you're saying Mike won overall?
Well, for me, yes.
Oh. Cool. Thank you for your judgment. Thank you for being thorough. And then, which judge would like to go next?
I guess I can go next.
Go for it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Alex, Mike, both you guys, I think, did pretty well in presenting a pretty clear case in terms of how you view the world. I do think that while Mike definitely set it up for physicalism in the context of, a materialistic worldview where certain mechanisms and atoms come together to amalgamate something we call consciousness, but I think that there's still an epistemic gap, and that epistemic gap is strong enough to the effect that a truth claim couldn't be made, and I think Alex did a good job in pointing that out. I do think the conversation with regards to making ontological claims without epistemic access, and then in the context of the identity theory and weak emergence, I think Alex pulled in stronger with regards to his arguments in that category. But I think that overall, I think that Alex won, and so that's my take.
Okay, thank you for your vote. Which judge would like to go next? I think it's Tiny and I think Jordan. Tiny and Jordan are left. Oh, you guys good?
Jordan or?
Yeah, you can go Tiny if you want.
Okay, sure. So the opening statements, I would say that both addressed Mary's Room. Mike laid out the difference between an ontological gap and an epistemic gap. and how this is reducible due to practicality, and how the epistemic gap is practically impossible while the ontological gap is practically irrelevant. I think that there was a good addressing of that. Alex was trying to say that for reality, physicalism is insufficient, and it's a brute assertion. And he was laying out the difference between a subjective experience and an objective, fully determined in a principle for identity theory and how to bridge the gap, the identity of how the brain equals the mind. I'm going to go with, I think I'm going to go with Mike on that one. For the cross-examines, there was still an addressing of how it's impractical and too complicated for the epistemic gap, and it's not an ontological gap. How there's like a third to first person differential, there's an agreement there, but that wasn't the problem that was presented. It was the problem in epistemology, but in ontology it wasn't addressed, and there was no real contradiction entailed throughout any of the cross exams. In fact, I think Alex tried to present a contradiction that was not the view that was presented. In reducibility, it was a difference in ontology and epistemology, and I know that philosophically these two get confused way too often. I will say that through the cross exams, I'm going to give it to Mike as well. And in the closing statements, I think that there was an addressing of this in how there's no contradiction available, and then there was a there was something presented by Alex that triangles are the same as neurons insofar as like the way in which they operate, which again didn't really address it. It's like saying for a cat, it's very impractical, but there was still no contradiction provided. I still don't think Alex provided it. Alex did say that materialists should be embarrassed, and he still didn't point out the ontological gap. He pointed out the epistemic gap, which didn't address the argument that was given. I think that overall, Mike took it home. So I'm going to give it to Mike.
Bet. And Jordan, you're the last one to go, and you're honestly going to be the tiebreaker.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
2-2.
I love that. I love that. No pressure. Okay. So I agree largely with a lot of the positive things said about both debaters. I appreciate the passion, and again, thank you, Coco, for hosting. I think the ad hominems got a little bit out of control there, but I'm going to be mostly critical here on both debaters. I'm going to start with Alex. Alex, I think, failed to make as clear as he could have what the hard problem of consciousness is, and how things like Mary's Room or philosophical zombies, I think the inverted spectrum is also a kind of a missed opportunity there. I think that could have helped kind of illuminate things and kind of tie those together. I think that this very deductive demand of kind of being able to strictly deduce things. I think Mike was right that is a really high demand, and I think that there were quite a few opportunities where there are other arguments that I think Alex made really good. Now, whether there was in fact a contradiction, I think is unclear. but I think there, at the very least, I think Alex pointed a good tension, but I think he spent too much time on that and could have brought in other arguments to further push the point instead of just kind of repeating himself. Okay. I think with respect to Mike, I think that he started strong, but I think so there's basically kind of three issues, right? One is, so we've got this epistemic gap, which Mike admitted to is an in-principle gap. And yes, there is this distinction between epistemology and ontology, right? However, depending on your view, right? But I think broadly under physicalism, right, an epistemic gap has to be able to be explained physically. And I think while Mike did gesture at why such a gap exists, he did not sufficiently explain from his particular flavor of physicalism why that gap has to exist. Because it seems like for any other physical property, again, not that we have to give this like deduction, but I should be able to explain in general what about that physical system and about those physical properties would constrain us in our ability to determine why that gap would exist, right? Because under kind of a reductive physicalism, all epistemic problems should be able to be themselves reduced to physical problems. Now, there might be just innate limitations, right? A good example of this would be something like a chaotic system, right? There are physical reasons why I cannot predict a chaotic system, even if that chaotic system is in fact a deterministic system, right? I think that when it came to giving reasons why anybody should accept his reductive thesis, specifically that consciousness is identical to bioelectricity, that while he gave reasons that clearly there's a relationship, there's a correlate, that there was not given any reasons why specifically bioelectricity, as opposed to some perhaps like broader pattern, right? Because like, for example, his view would like rule out that like machines would have consciousness. And I think something more specific, although I think it was Alex's failure to press him on that point. This was a very, 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 very hard decision for me, because I think there was a lot of different places where both debaters, there was a lot of missed opportunities on both accounts. I think starting from a more neutral standpoint on both accounts could have really helped. I think Mike committing to a particular notion of materialism as opposed to defending a broader thesis, I think that was a missed opportunity. I think Alex relied on too much on certain idealist notions. I think there could have been an expansion of strategies there. But at the end of the day, I have to give it to Alex.
So yeah. Okay, with that, congratulations to Alex. Judges vote. Alex won 3 judges out of 5. Congratulations. Audience vote did go to Mike Brigandi. But honestly, both of you guys did very well. Congratulations. And this debate did go very well. Both of you guys are very studied in your positions. So well done, both of you guys. With that, we're going to finish off audience comments, questions, and critiques. But Mike and Alex, you guys can leave at any time. So like, even if it's like 2 minutes from now or 10 minutes from now, answer as many audience questions as you can, but you can leave at like any time that you want to.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks.
Go ahead.
I just want to say thanks to the judges, man. I appreciate all the critiques, and I will definitely toss those around. It's definitely true. I could have pushed harder. This is the first formal debate that I'm doing, so there were a little bit of nerves involved. Although I debate on my channel all the time, so it's kind of stupid. But yeah, no, I appreciate the critique. Thanks for being fair.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, folks, for being here, judges, and everybody. Yeah.
And I just want to say, Mike, look, it's all good, man. Like, this is my, hypothetical handshake. You did bring out the correct response to Mary's room for your position. It's just unfortunate that, yeah, I'll just leave it at that, man. It was a good fight.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anyone got any further comments, questions? We good to go?
Yeah, I'm all good to go.
Absolutely.
Pretty late for me anyway, so.
Yep. But thank you, judges, for judging. And then, yeah, we're going to get to the comments and questions. I guess we'll do as much as we can. There's a lot of people. But judges, you can hang out or you can drop down. It's up to you guys. But yeah, one by one, we'll get through it.
I just have one question. Anyone can answer it. Is butt cheeks one word, or should I spread them apart?
You should spread them apart.
That's very good. That's a very important question. Very important. But
actually,
okay.
Wait. Put an no, not an ampersand. What's that called? A hyphen. Put a hyphen in there.
but anyway, we'll get to the audience comments, questions, and critiques. So let me see. I don't know who to bring. Okay, I'm going to randomly pick somebody.
Hey, so Alex, I decided to show up for the debate. Yeah, that was interesting. I'm so curious about this like strange position that geometry and biology are like explainable by the same mechanism or system. So can you further elaborate how it's similar to say that triangles can't produce blue is the same thing as saying neurons can't produce like perception of color? Can you explain that more?
Yeah. So what I'm referring to is the categorical incommensurability. And what I mean by that is like it would be impossible to form like a valid deductive conclusion where there's triangles in the premises and then the color blue in the conclusion, right? And so it's analogous to the consciousness conversation in the sense that expecting a first person experience from processes that are only describable from the third person and supposedly have no intrinsic first person experience, right? There's a logical leap there. So
well, I get that you think it's a category difference there, but that's fine. But if you want to say that's the case for physicalism, I can't even imagine how you're going to even try to explain this other than just saying, well, consciousness is fundamental, therefore there is no category error there. Do you have a different response other than saying that to explain how how idealism can explain this experience?
Look, if something is irreducible, it's necessarily fundamental.
That's not what I asked. Like, can you explain how you use consciousness to bridge the supposed gap?
The question is mistaken. It's confused. What gap would I bridge if consciousness is fundamental?
Well, I asked the question earlier tonight. I asked you, how do you explain that you see one thing comparatively to another thing? Right? In a physical view, you say, well, you have certain physical substrates that react with you. How do you explain that in a view of idealism using consciousness? You can't explain why you see one thing versus another thing.
No, why would that follow? Look, the substrate is the substrate. Whether you want to call it physical or mental, it doesn't change the regularities that we observe and call the laws of physics.
That's all right. I just asked, what's the explanation using consciousness as a substrate?
What's the explanation for why I see a plane and not a truck?
One thing versus another thing, yeah.
Because it's a plane and not a truck.
But you think it's all consciousness?
Like
With
you
that,
have to formulate the question better.
okay, we do have to stop it there. We have to get to the other guests, but thank you for coming up, one. Maybe we can expand later on. But thank you. And with that, we're gonna get the next person. Yeah, Haru, you got a question for us? You there, Haru?
But I would like to thank the judges and the host. Yeah, I would like to thank the judges, the host, and the two debaters. They take a lot of time. But one of the major questions they have is, what do you think you could have done better in this debate? This is to both debate opponents.
If Mike's not going to go, I'll go. Yeah, I mean, I think all the judges' critiques were extremely valid. I definitely ad hommed a little bit. Thinking back on it, it was a little excessive. I would say that I could have expounded further on the contradiction that Mike's view entails about the reduction, non-reduction thing. I could have pushed a little harder. I mean, look, I could have done everything a little bit better, like straight up. So, yeah.
No. Thank you for that. I'll go ahead, Mike, and answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I could have done better. Maybe be more clear about why his position, why his epistemic gap concern is not a concern from my view. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Can I ask a secondary question?
And I'm happy that I'm happy about the insults I gave. I'm not ashamed. They're not ad hominems, by the way. Insults are not ad hominems.
Can I ask a secondary question, or is there not enough time?
Go ahead. You could ask your secondary question. Don't move on to the next guest.
What is one compliment you can give to the opponent, to both sides, to their position?
I mean, if you
I
guys
mean,
want to do that.
Yeah, look, I mean, he predicted my first move, which was the knowledge argument, and he gave the proper response to it under his view. That's good.
Mike, do you want to answer?
Yeah, nice motorcycle.
Yeah, I guess that will do. We'll get to the next skit.
I can put you on the back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it, Stick. You got it?
Yeah. So I'll just define consciousness. Yeah, I'll just define it because I just want to make sure there's no confusion. So consciousness has two components: conscious experience and the recipient of conscious experience, or the observer of conscious experience. So conscious experience is any experience that has content, like the taste of chocolate, smell of a rose, pain of a toothache, and so on. And the observer is the thing that is receiving conscious experiences is the individuated self with a specific personal identity that is observing conscious experience. So my question to Mike, because I'm not idealist, but I do think like the observer is like a soul or a non-physical thing with subjectivity, with a specific personal identity. So my question to Mike is, how can something impersonal like a brain generate something which is personal, which is the observer, because it has the attribute of being a specific personal identity? And why does a particular brain give rise to observer 10 rather than observer 5, right? So so let's say like Ronaldo and Messi are next to each other, right? So let's say Ronaldo is observer 2,016,000 and Messi, the brain, is observer 2. So why can't it be switched? Why can't why does a particular brain give rise to this specific observer rather than another without invoking the soul, which correlates with a particular brain?
You're asking me why I have my identity and not somebody else's identity? Because
why are you?
Because my brain is the one that's generating my identity.
Yeah, so why does that brain
It's
give rise to
self-referential.
your identity rather than a distinct one?
Because my brain is performing a vast series of calculations, electrochemical signals that are oscillating throughout my brain. And so that's
So
going
let's say
to give me the sense of my identity versus you. That's going to give me the sense that, yeah, there's an external world around me that is different from me. This is a basic conscious neuroscientific understanding of the brain.
Well, you didn't answer the first part. How can something impersonal, like a objective structure, which is a third person, become personal? So how do you go from impersonal to personal?
There is no ontological distinction between first and third person. They're both physical stuff. And so when you suggest, oh, how do you get the first person from the third? That's just suggesting dualism. You're just suggesting that they're incredulously, there's got to be something more than physical. That's why first person is different. No, to me, first person just simply means my aggregate of atoms. This applies to bottles, boxes, any physical object, not just humans.
So let's say you're observer number 5, right? So why does that brain that I'm looking at the screen give rise to observer 5 rather than another brain that existed like 2,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, or a brain that will exist 200 years in the future in like Tokyo, Japan? Why specifically observer 5?
And then go ahead and answer, Mike, and then we'll end it right there and get on to the next.
Look, my brain gives rise to my identity because those are my atoms. You have different atoms, so you have different identity. It's that simple.
All right, we do have to end it there and get on to the next guest. Thank you for coming up, Stick. And Calm, go ahead.
Hey, so I feel like there's like two things that happen with this argument that it is difficult to hang on to both concepts, which is one, if we had a theory of everything, what that theory would be explaining is something that physicalists would commit to, but what it's explaining is said to be consciousness. So the idea, I think, is that it's said to be consciousness, as Alex said, is because of the explanatory gap. So such that if we explain the explanatory gap, I think, I'm not sure, we would have reason to believe that what is being explained is actually just all the physical facts that exist, and that could be in a way approximating what reality is. But if we understand what emotion is, because it seems like what Alex wants to say is the subjective feeling, the what it is like, is a thing that's not explained. So there's something called like Schrodinger's emotion that might end up explaining something about like what it's like. It seems like if we think of something like being attracted to a particular thing, if you're chemotaxis, if you're thinking about a particular molecule, that you would be attracted going to that. It could be that if we're positive and negative mental states, that scale that up through weak emergence, you get something like that is experiential. I think Alex rejects that, but I don't know if you want to say anything about those concepts of how it scales up.
You talking to me or him?
Yeah, well, yeah, with Alex, I'm thinking like if things are both positive and negative mental states, if it's reducible, if emotions are reducible to positive and negative things, it's potentially reducible to being attracted towards or away from things in the same way. So that's kind of like functionally how emotions work. So we're just experiencing complex sets of positive and negative mental states, or positive attraction and negative attraction.
I'm so confused. I don't know what your point is. I don't know what your question is.
Oh, I was going to Alex. Like the idea is that the what it's like, right, is a challenge that the physicalist has.
Right.
If we say all's what it's like is positive and negative mental states being attracted to something, scale that from like a microorganism that's like maybe attracted to light, there's motivations in that, scale that up, and then you get like complex series of positive and negative.
Okay,
such
so
that,
if I'm understanding you correctly, you're drawing an analogy between like the movement of charged ions and positive and negative. Like you're making an analogy with mental states So
Yeah.
to say that it's identical to that?
So yeah, the idea is like within the weak emergence, scale up the complexity in the organism, like using a kind of idea of proprioception of like self-referential, that we go towards and away from something, and complex scaling decision making would give rise to something like consciousness.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a cool hypothesis. I'm just not sure like what an explanation would look like that invokes that like an actual, like, we can say whatever we want, but I'm under the impression that having a first person perspective is something completely not only unexpected but not reducible to stuff that only has third person description.
And so if an explanation that could refute idealism that is physical, what does that look like? Does it have to like perfectly represent it, or can it be like a 99.999% approximation of it?
Look, all I want is a general idea of why it's in principle possible, or how it's in principle possible for subjective experience to emerge from a physical substrate.
Okay.
And with that, we do have to get on to the next guest. But thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And Roy, you can go ahead and answer and ask your question.
Thank you. First of all, again, thank you for both debaters. I thought this was very interesting, very great. My question is for Alex. I first want to say that I am not a physicalist, far from it. But I think I have to be fair. And I think that ultimately in this debate, Mike was put in a position where he had to defend how do I articulate this? He had to defend a position that I don't think he was making ultimately. And here's what I mean by that. One example is when he could no longer reduce, right, a physical reality because it would be illogical for him to know what Alex atoms are. If something is illogical or logically impossible, I don't think that you can say that his argument is defeated, because if it's not logically possible, right, I think we have to make a distinction between what is logically possible and how far he can ultimately reduce to have some sort of epistemic foundation of something. And Alex, again, I'm in your position. I'm not a physicalist, but I personally was unsatisfied with your response to that specific scenario. And my question to you is, can you possibly give a better explanation of why you said that, he was done and why his argument was over, when I think it makes sense, right? Like if it's logically impossible for him to know what your atoms are, I don't think that defeats his argument. What can you say to that?
Yeah. So look, there's a lot there. I'll try to be brief. Like, when you're an identity theorist and in combination with weak emergence, you're committed to a particular set of views. That means that everything must be in principle, not in practice, but in principle, deducible and reducible, right? And when Mike says that I can't know everything about your experience because I'm not you, he's admitting of an irreducibility of consciousness. Some aspect of consciousness is not reducible to description. Now we have to understand, right, when we say something is an emergent property like wetness of water, this entails that the wetness is fully determined by the underlying parts, the molecules. It can fully logically be explained in terms of molecules. The molecules can fully logically be explained in terms of more fundamental stuff, right? This is how we give a coherent account if we're a physicalist. And if you're admitting that that's not even in principle possible, right? You're no longer a reductionist. You're saying that there's this higher level emergent thing that we're not going to be able to fully account for, but it's definitely still physical. It's just a special pleading.
So Alex, you're saying that in your view, you can be me. You are
No,
me.
I'm saying if I was a physicalist reductionist.
No, in your view, in your view, can you be me?
No.
So then
But
you
it's
your view
irrelevant. I'm
your
not a
view commits to
reductionist.
the same problem mine does. Then there's still
No,
you have
I'm
still
not
a
a
gap in your
reductionist.
view. Your
I'm
view
not a
doesn't solve the
reductionist.
answer.
I'm not a reductionist physicalist.
And with that, we do have to move on to the next guest. But thank you, Roy, for coming up. I appreciate you.
Thank you for sure.
Yep. Moderator Matt, you can go on ahead.
What's up, guys? I think one of the questions that came up a lot during the Alex O'Connor debate with, or not debate, I'm sorry, discussion with what's his name, the guy who likes analytic Castro Bernardo. Yep.
Yeah.
So one of the things is like, hey, materialism doesn't really explain what something is; it just explains what something does, right? Two questions, very briefly. I think Mike's is going to be pretty obvious. Alex, I'll put this to you. Does your worldview explain what consciousness is? Would be question number one. We'll start there.
Yeah. So consciousness is the ground of reality because it's necessarily irreducible. When we cannot explain something in terms of anything else, that is the explanation. It is fundamental.
Right, so in terms of what it is just fundamental. That's the defining characteristic. I think, and then following up on that, right? The problem is that we can only describe something based on what it does, right? What it in science and whatnot. Sure.
With
we can only describe based on what something does, right?
Yeah.
And so
Science
when we
tells you what stuff does, not what stuff is. Yes.
Right, and my point is going to be this, and I'm going to pass this off as a question, but the point is when we define what consciousness is, it's always based on what it does, and any attempt to describe what it is hand waved to, well, it's just base. We don't have to describe what it is because it's just fundamental, so we don't have to, right? So I'll put this to the point, right? Does materialism explain consciousness? In my view, by saying that consciousness is fundamental, you're not describing it. You're not explaining it. You're just saying it's base, so I don't need to, right? Whereas when it comes to materialism, you do have to define and describe where it comes from, what its components are, so you are inquisitive more. So I would say, I mean, materialism would explain consciousness more, but I'll land the plane there and leave it as it.
And then do you have a question for Mike Brigandi, and then we can go from there?
Mike, I would just say, I think the questions themselves, right, when these are posed to you, there's underlining problems with which you have to solve, right? And both parties have to solve this. And when it's being proposed, there's framing of a question that you have to deal with, and you have to reframe that question. So when it comes to just saying consciousness is fundamental, understand that, and obviously don't let this affect the debate itself, but understand that is sidestepping the problem of defining what it actually is, what it's made out of, how it functions, all that stuff.
Yeah, but we were not debating about idealism. My goal was to defend my view, and he was supposed to show a flaw in my view. He didn't do that. We weren't talking about idealism.
Well, I don't know. That's what your opponent believes in, so I figured that'd be part of your
Right, but I know
research.
that, but he didn't want to defend idealism. He was too scared. That's why he chose this topic.
LOL.
But with that,
you want to debate idealism versus physicalism next?
Idealism versus physicalism? Yeah, hit me up. I'll check my calendar.
We could run that debate. That could be the next debate that we run. But yeah, we'll be in conversation.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I got a question. I got a question for I have one question for the host, and I have another question for both Mike and Alex. So my first question for the host is, just throughout the entire debate, you were wearing like sunglasses indoors, and I just didn't really understand what that was about.
Because he's a gangster, bro.
Okay.
So
my second question. My second question would be to Mike and Alex. How do you guys feel like you could strive more towards like intrinsic humility as like two different parties debating? Like, what kind of steps could you take to reach like intrinsic humility?
It depends on what you mean by that, right? But if you're saying that I could have been more humble, I'll just grant that.
I'm just saying, like, what kind of steps do you think you could take to reach that?
I certainly could have meditated prior to the debate. I certainly could have focused more on content and less on the show per se.
Yeah. Okay. And Mike, how would you strive to reach that?
I wouldn't. I don't give a shit.
Okay.
That answers all my questions. Thank you.
With that, I guess we can move on. Dr. Evil, Kodo, go, and then Dr. Evil.
Yes, I've got a question for Mike, but some claims before that. If I understand you correctly, it seems like you identify with atomic layer of ontology. But even from the physics point of view, it might not be the case, because at this point, physics is saying that atoms, after all, are coming from excitation of quantum fields. What is more interesting, this is exactly what David Tong, a British theoretical physicist, said. Literally, what we are, physically, is quantum field. So, as you can see, this guy grounded identity at the deeper ontological layer than you, and what is more interesting, this could be translated to a claim that you and Alex are the one, fundamentally, beneath your, individual subjectiveness. So I'm curious, how would you respond to that?
Is this a question to me?
Saying everything's connected, even under your view. If everything is the same substance, like if we take my identity out of the picture, we're all the same shit. That's what he's saying. Do you agree with that or not?
No. What? No. Why the hell would that bother?
Did you hear what I just said? Basically, there's like guy like David Tong, British theoretical physicist, and he specialized in quantum field theory. And basically, what he's saying that physically, what we are is quantum field. So basically, he grounded identity on the deeper level than you, because you're saying that we are atoms, but atoms are not fundamental, mate.
Maybe you weren't here when I stated my opening statement. I said I was a materialist, but in the modern context, it's describing a physicalism, which means I think all entities can be described by fundamental physics. That's what all entities are. And so that fits within any quantum interpretation. Yeah, quantum fields, we're all quantum fields. That doesn't change a damn thing about my view.
Yeah, but to defend Mike a little bit here, materialism is just used colloquially to refer to modern physicalism, and I just granted him that, like he was not.
Oh, in that case, I was confused, because when you're saying that we are atoms, basically, then I thought like, what? That's false claim.
Yeah, I understand. This is why there's still debate about this. Atoms are not the most fundamental, obviously, but that's not relevant to my physicalism.
But I thought that science is about being precise, so.
But there's a limit to how precise we can be. We don't have knowledge of everything in the universe. We can do the best we can. I think that's why physicalism does the best it can in accurately mapping onto reality. I don't think idealism does at all.
Okay. With that, we do have to move on to the next case. Thank you for coming up, Kodo. We appreciate you.
Yeah, I just had a question.
Go ahead, Dr. Evil, and then Bobby.
Hello, people. Hey, controversial. Thanks for hosting this. Long awaited. Thanks for judge. I do wish Mike won, but hey, I'm not a judge. I just want to say, hey, little comments. Alex still confuses epistemic gap with ontological gap. Still thinks Mike is some kind of weird dualist when he just thinks mental is another word for physical here, but it's fine. I do have a question for both Alex and Mike. I'll start with Mike. Mike, can you explain the parsimonious nature of physicalism when it comes to fitting the data about reality, for example?
Yeah, we're just positing one thing, physical stuff. That's it. Everything is physical. And we get consciousness. We get everything we observe. We get stars, planets, everything we see, space, time. It all is all physical shit. And we have good explanations for consciousness. People keep saying, oh, well, we don't know what consciousness is. Well, we have a good enough understanding of it to say, yeah, it's probably physical shit. And to even suggest that because we can't understand consciousness entirely, that we have to say that it's fundamental is absurd. Imagine if we did this with life. Oh, we don't know how life comes from non-life. Well, that's not the question. Life is a process of non-life. It's what non-life does, not what non-life is. There's no object of life. And so people in the past would have said, well, maybe life is fundamental. Just like you guys are now saying that consciousness is fundamental. I think it's a grave mistake to make, especially when it defies the scientific evidence.
Thank you, Mike. Alex, I would pose the same question. Can you explain how idealism is parsimonious, at least more parsimonious than physicalism?
Yeah, so look, the idealist has to acknowledge two things. Consciousness is absolutely real and it's absolutely irreducible, right? So we begin our worldview within the only self-evident fact that nature provides. Consciousness exists. When we work our way outward from there and try to construct a worldview, we simply do not create the category of physical because it's not necessary to explain any data. By doing that, we grant ourselves access to a coherent worldview with less assumptions.
All right, I sorry. Okay, here maybe I'll. Sorry, controversial. Maybe I'll rephrase this slightly. A bit more of a slightly fun question here for Alex. Okay, well, if that's the case, can you explain to me diesel engines under idealism?
Yeah, it's just a category error, dude. The ontology has no bearing on the explanation of diesel engines. That explanation is going to be firmly planted in, physics at the most fundamental, plus, some other stuff like engineering. I mean, none of those explanations go away, dude.
I'm not saying idealism is here to explain things. I'm saying, under physicalism, a diesel engine would be made of physical parts, etc., reducible to quantum fields. But what would that look like under idealism?
Yeah, it's reducible to consciousness, bro. Everything is reducible to universal consciousness. It emerges in the way that we describe in physics. Same exact stuff.
How is that more parsimonious than reducible to physical parts?
Yeah, because we're not positing an extra. We're not positing an extra. We're not positing an extra ontological category. We start in mind, as anybody has to. Right? To build ontology, you have to go through epistemology. You're already invoking mind, right? You stay in mind, right? Because if you say that there's a physical reality that gives rise to mind, you're unable to logically recover mind.
Okay.
So we have only mind. External reality is also mind.
Okay. With that, we do have to move on to our next guest, and thank you for coming out, Bobby. Right?
Yeah, I'm actually here. I'm trying to recall why Jordan, because I know Jordan gave criticisms on both parties, but I'm not too sure. He's gone now, but I'm not too sure why he favored Alex over Mike at the end. Did he give reasons?
Not really.
Kind of did. He said Mike failed. I think he said that Mike failed to explain why the gap exists. So essentially, as far as I understand it, Alex proposed that there's some kind of gap, and Mike agreed that the gap existed. But I think Mike's explanation wasn't sufficient for Jordan to explain how, even though that gap exists, it's explained under materialism, which I don't agree with Jordan's claim there, but I believe that was the reasoning he did give as his final nail in the coffin.
Is that so? I thought at first he just gave two criticisms on both parties, and then somehow just ended up saying, well, Mike, like after he gave the criticism on both parties, he just said, well, I'm gonna give it to Alex, but I'm not too sure if he gave like some follow-up explanation of why he gave it to Alex.
Yeah, he just told you, bro. So like the thing is, when you're defending a position, like
I understand the epistemic gap, and I thought that was just that was just a criticism that he gave to Mike. I thought like he was gonna talk about like some pros as to why he should, or the other parties won. But I mean, if that's the reason, then that's okay. I mean,
I understand that either. I thought the same thing. I understood that he gave critiques for both, but I didn't understand why he gave it to Alex instead of just acknowledging critiques for both.
Well, considering he's probably the most educated on these topics out of all of us, I'm just going to go with his judgment.
I'm not saying. Like, to be fair, I'm neutral when it comes to this kind of position. Actually, I was just wondering why Jordan. Because when I was in the comments, it seemed like Jordan just gave criticism and then gave Alex or someone a winner, and I'm not too sure he gave like a follow-up explanation of the winner. But if it's just epistemic gap, it's cool. I'm cool with it.
When he first started talking, I thought he was going to give it to Mike, right? Because he was criticizing me pretty heavily. But then, towards the end of his summary, right, he was saying that Mike did not adequately explain why there is a gap, right? He's saying, yeah, there is a gap,
but it's okay. Don't worry. There's nothing to see here. And
That's not what he said.
unfortunately, that's not just like how it works. Like
No,
you have to demonstrate your claims.
Jordan said that Mike acknowledges the gap, but he didn't sufficiently explain why this gap would still exist under materialism.
Yeah, that's what
The
I
gap,
just
as
said.
far as I understand it, not that he was saying look away from the gap, but as far as I
Yes.
understand it, Mike claims that the reason that you can't possess someone else's experiences is because that there are two different physical states, and those physical states determine the experiences. I think that he gave sufficient reasoning for why that gap still exists. He even said it's a violation of the law of identity. You become something else. But that's why I
Nobody's
don't
saying you
understand
have
Jordan's
to become
explanation.
something else. Nobody's saying that you have to become. You look. If you're a
No,
reductive
Mike's saying
materialist,
that.
if you're a reductive materialist, you're saying that everything in reality is going to have to be in principle describable in third person objective language.
That's
Right?
an
I'm not even trying to argue
ontological
with you. I'm
claim,
trying to
not an
believe what Mike
epistemic
said.
claim.
We also really quick, guys. So after Bobby, then it's gonna be one, and then it's gonna be Barely and DBR, and then that's gonna be it for the guest. I'll end the live, but then I'm gonna start a new live, and I'll be editing the debate to then post it tonight. But yeah, that's basically it.
Oh, I can drop down if
Look,
you want to give someone else a question. I just want to be here for the open
look,
panel
just
after.
because there's an epistemic gap doesn't mean that there's an ontological gap. So that's why physicalism can be true, yet I don't have epistemic access to every physical fact in the universe.
Look, so I
I don't
agree
know.
with you.
Do you think I have epistemic access to what's happening beyond the event horizon of the fucking universe?
Look,
No,
I agree with
we
you.
don't
Just
have
be-
that. But we
Look,
can
I
still
agree
say
with
it's physical, right? And so the epistemic gap is irrelevant to the ontological claim I'm making.
Look, I
That's why
agree with
you
you.
didn't have
Just
an
be-
argument there. That's why Jordan didn't understand.
I think my
I'm
question would
pretty
help
sure Jordan understood. Look, let me just
me.
like respond to that. Like, I agree with you that just because there's an epistemic gap does not necessarily mean there's an ontological gap. However, when you admit that
Then
epistemic gap,
physicalism is coherent. Then you just
if you
conceded.
if you admit that epistemic gap is permanent, which you did, that commits you to a direct contradiction, because what you're taking then is a non-reductive position. Like, you have to understand the
No,
entailments of
it's
the
not it's not non-reductive. It's
Bro,
still completely
everything must be
reductive. I'm still
reducible.
completely reductionist about
If you
physicalism.
cannot know everything about my experience in third person objective language, you are no longer a reductionist.
But I can. In principle. It's
No,
the
in
first person
principle
you
you can't,
suggest that I
because
can't. The
you
first
said you
person
can't
is
know what
the
it's
first
like to be
person is
me.
where I don't have epistemic access because I can't be your atoms. And so
Look, you keep
I don't
saying
think
that.
there's
Look,
an actual gap that's relevant to my ontological claim.
look, you keep saying that you can't know what it's like to be me because you're not my atoms. I'm saying you should be able to know what it's like to be me without being my atoms. This is what is entailed by reductive physicalism.
Oh, well,
No, I don't take experiential knowledge to be something as the same as physical facts. Again, your experience is not equate to physical facts.
Okay, with that, DBR, go ahead. What you got for us?
Wait, was that Barely Legal's question?
Oh no, you were first in the queue. But go ahead.
So, my question?
Did you drop any questions or comments?
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Wait,
sorry.
Coco, did you, wait, I just want to respond. Did you drop valid?
I do have to like end the live and start editing, so I did say Barely and DBR are gonna be like the last ones.
I think it's just gonna be I think he might be the only one that's left. I don't think it's
I mean, like, I already said I was gonna end with DBR and Barely, but
okay, no lie.
So whose turn is it? Barely or me?
It's you. Go ahead, DBR.
Okay, sorry. So, Alex, I want to address one of the previous guest questions about psychedelics. I just don't see, like, basically, if LSD is a chemical that alters neurons, right? And those neural alterations systematically and predictably alter conscious experience, the simplest explanation is that conscious states are identical to neural states, right? So
No, it's not.
wait, hold on, wait.
That doesn't follow at all.
Wait. Idealism must treat this precise causal mapping as coincidence, right? which is like,
No,
in
dude.
my opinion, metaphysically
You
extravagant
don't
and
understand
scientifically sterile.
idealism. You don't understand idealism. Look, man, first of all, there's two things there. You made an assumption about idealism that is ill-informed, and I can expound on that. But the first thing you said, which is that if we can observe a consistent correlation, the simplest explanation is identity. This doesn't follow at all, right? What you would want to make there is an inductive claim, right? But that doesn't, you got to understand what you're saying when you say something is identical. Like there's a burden that comes along with that. Reductive position is an absurdly difficult position to defend because its burden is so great. So that being said, no, it's not a coincidence, right? Everything is mental. What you call a brain is a localized expression of that mental activity, which is universal. Okay, so in also the molecule that you're invoking here, it's also a mental process. It's one mental process affecting another mental process. My mind looks like a brain to you. The brain is the expression or the extrinsic appearance of what is intrinsically mental.
Okay, so
it's no surprise whatsoever that a chemical, which is a mental process, can affect my mind, which is also a mental process.
Okay, wait. So what you're saying basically is that there's a universal mental order whose internal dynamics perfectly mirror molecular neuroscience. But the problem with this is that it begs.
Hold on,
a
that's
few
not
questions.
what I'm saying.
No. But you're basically
No, but that's not what I'm saying. No, but that's not what I'm saying.
Let me finish. I'll let you finish. Right? You're saying so.
But you're
by
going to
that-
ask a question based on a.
Let me finish.
That's not what I'm
Right?
saying.
Let me finish. You're saying, but by that, then why even posit neurons at all, right? And you can't explain why destroying the brain destroys experience. And on
Yes,
top of that,
dude, you don't
no, you
understand
can't wait.
that.
Let me finish.
Look,
I'll let you
bro,
finish.
this
I
always
let you
happens.
finish.
No, look, man. Look.
Go ahead, Alex.
I reclaim my time.
Wait, chill. This is not a debate. But go ahead, Alex. I mean,
Why does consciousness disappear under anesthesia instead of expanding?
First of all, there's no evidence that consciousness disappears. Did you know that they also administer?
What?
Did you know that they also administer amnesia drugs along with general anesthesia? Why do you think they do that?
What?
Why do you think they administer amnesia drugs along with general anesthesia?
Alex, when you're under anesthesia, does consciousness
why do you think they
disappear?
want you to forget things under general anesthesia?
What are you? That's not addressing my point.
Well, there's no evidence of unconsciousness. That's the point. General anesthesia certainly has an effect, but to say that the person is not conscious is a step too far. It doesn't follow. They literally administer drugs that block the formation of memories on purpose. And
Alex,
1
when
in
you're-
5 people come out of general anesthesia with some form of PTSD.
Okay, guys, with that, we do got to move
No,
on.
hold on. Let Mike
barely-
respond. Mike was saying something.
No, that doesn't answer his question. Right?
You're not answering my
Why
question.
do we see very peculiar consistencies between drugs and brain activity? It seems too coincidental to be coming from some fundamental thing.
I don't
Yes.
think you understand mental causation.
Alex, you're
Okay, go ahead,
rebuilding physicalism
what's the
inside
mechanism for that?
consciousness.
You don't have
we do have to move
You're
on, guys.
rebuilding physicalism
wait,
inside
hold on,
consciousness
hold on.
itself.
Wait. So we do need to get that answer, and then we do need to move on for the night. But go ahead, Alex. Give one final response. And then
Wait, can I
we can
restate the
go.
question real quick?
Oh yeah, restate the question, and then
Okay,
Alex. go.
Alex, you are rebuilding physicalism inside consciousness minus the explanatory power. Please explain to me why consciousness disappears under anesthesia, and also why destroying the brain destroys experience. Please explain that to me under idealism.
Okay,
Go ahead,
look,
Alex. Answer, and then we do got to move on to barely.
Okay, I already answered the question about anesthesia. Okay, I'm not rebuilding physicalism within idealism. Okay, that's just a category error. You're referring to science as if I have to throw science out the window when I invoke a different ontology than physicalism. Physicalism is a metaphysical belief system about science. Idealism is the same. Okay, nothing goes away. All the explanatory power of physics, of neuroscience, it all remains. It's just the case that you can't say the brain is creating the consciousness.
Okay. With that, we do got to move on to barely. Thank you for coming up, DBR.
Checkmate. Checkmate.
Barely, what question do you have for us?
My question's for Mike. I'm just trying to understand this idea that the first person experience of consciousness is the kind of atoms electrical process that's happening, and I thought if you could put like a different instruments around a brain and a physical body and map out all of the different processes that are happening, does that give you access to that first person experience, or
No,
how
because
am I
you're not
misunderstanding?
those atoms. You're not those atoms.
So, and when you say atoms, you're talking about the physical process of these atoms moving around with
Yes,
neurons.
you'd have to have your atoms and your configuration of atoms with the same system. It's just not possible.
Could you simulate them?
Sure, we can simulate the entire human body on a computer program, but that's not the same thing as me being your atoms.
So you couldn't simulate the conscious experience.
We can simulate a conscious experience, sure, but I can't be your experience. I'm not your atoms. This is very simple.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm open to it. It still seems strange to me to go from descriptions of physical things and then becoming what it's like to be inside of that. Maybe I'm not understanding, or it just seems like a leap to me.
Look, I can't be this bottle's atoms. I'll never know what it's like to be this bottle, right? This is basic stuff.
Does the bottle have a first-person experience of the world?
Well, in my view, the first person just means these atoms.
Okay, and go ahead and finish up, Mike, and then we'll conclude there. Oh, was that it, Mike?
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Mike.
But yeah, thank you guys for coming up. And there's 112 people in here. Thank you guys for watching this debate. Thank you guys for watching this event. Hopefully I did good. Hopefully I said all the right things and didn't say anything that was, off script or ruined the debate. But I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys debating. I'm going to end this live and then start a new one and hang out for a little bit, and I'll be editing, and I will post the video tonight. For all the 110 people in here, if you're in here and you want to debate on my channel, you like what I do, send me a DM. I'll set up any debate as long as you have done your research, you're professional. We can I'll host any debate within reason. But Alex and Mike, you both did very well. Judges, I couldn't do this without you. Thank you, judges, for taking a chance on the underdog and being a part of my project. And thank you everyone for watching and coming up and giving your comments, questions, concerns, and critiques. I really appreciate it. I can't do what I do without all the support I get from this community. I love this community. Anyone got any last words? And then we'll be on our way.
Yeah. Can I throw a plug out there? Is that cool?
Yeah, absolutely. Plug your channel, okay. And then like Mike, plug your stuff. Absolutely. I want to help my friends out.
Look, first of all, host, excellent job, dude. It was very professional. I couldn't have asked for a better platform. Give me a follow on YouTube. Me and my friend Stash, we have a YouTube show that is just trying to get off the ground here. It's called Reality Gone Mental, all one word. The link is in my bio. I also host lives 3 nights a week discussing exactly this topic. If you want further clarification or give some critique or debate or whatever, just drop me a follow. Thanks again.
Absolutely. And Mike, you want to shout out anything that you're doing? You're a bigger creator than me. Both of you guys are, but feel free to shout out anything you guys are doing and put yourselves out there.
Dude, everybody knows who I am.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Yeah. And I'll see you guys around. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to end this live, count to 3, and then I would have started another live. So I'll see you guys in a couple seconds.